What is going on, everybody? My name is Michael Levan. Thank you so much for joining me today. And one of the things that I've found so far with my videos that I kind of just noticed is I'm way more on this side than I am on this side. I'm not in the middle, so I apologize if that's kind of throwing people off. The reason why is because my mic, I'm still trying to figure out where it should sit on my desk. Anyway, my rant is over. Thank you so much for joining. Really do appreciate it. Of course, as always, in this video, this is going to be, let me check here, week 6. We're going to be talking about automation, repeatability, and CICD. So for the CICD portion, I am going to have a hands-on demo. We're going to look at that via GitHub Actions. But before that, I want to take a second to kind of talk about automation and repeatability. So first and foremost, I feel like a lot of folks and organizations and just people in general get the idea of automation and repeatability a little bit wrong, and I'll tell you why. Automation, by definition, is you take something that you're doing manually and you automate it. Here's the problem. If you automate a broken process, you're just gonna find that it's broken faster. If you're manually or automating a process that's manually creating tech debt, you're just gonna automatically create tech debt. So, perfect example. Let's say you have, I don't know, like some type of web config for an IIS application on a Windows server. And manually, you deploy the server with maybe CICD, you do some automation, but you have to manually take some line or some config and throw it in the config file itself, the web config file. Well, I guess the question kind of becomes, why do you have to manually put the file or the line in the config file for the code? I mean, shouldn't that kind of be done with the application deployment? Shouldn't that be done in a previous step? Even if you automate that, like let's say you write some PowerShell code or some Python code to take that line and pop it into the web config and then deploy that web config to the server via CI/CD. You kind of got to ask yourself, like, why do I have to take this line of code and manually put it into the web config in the first place? It doesn't really make a lot of sense there. So that's what I mean by, and of course, that's like an example that you'll only fully understand if you know IIS and you know the web config files and stuff. But you could think of it like, just think about any piece of code, and if you ever have to manually put something in all the time that it's deployed, kind of got to think like, why do I have to do that in the first place, right? That should be the application step. So I would say that's probably the biggest thing from an automation standpoint, a repeatability standpoint. Like when we're thinking about automation, it's not just like it's not just take our crap and like automate it and just create more tech debt and create more crap on the systems. It's really about like what's repeatable. So when you think of automation, what I want you to think of is something that's repeatable, something that you need to repeat. Let me give you an example. Let's say right now you are deploying an application, like maybe some Java binaries or applets or whatever, to an EC2 instance in AWS. Well, that's kind of a repeatable process. Like, let's say you're doing that manually right now. Like every client that signs up for your service, you need to, you're hosting it for them. Like maybe this is your as a service offering. So you're hosting it for them, except you need to build out this configuration. Well, instead of doing that manually and clicking around an AWS console and, having to do everything from that perspective, what you could do instead is automate the creation of the EC2 instances. Maybe you have an auto scaling group, etc., with Terraform, and then to maybe get those Java applets or binaries over to the server. Maybe you have some automated script that does that for you, and then you take the Terraform code and the automated scripts and all that, and you put it into a CI/CD pipeline. So every single time that you have to deploy something for a customer, maybe you have some variables and you change them in your pipeline for customer name, location, for example, just 2 variables. And that way, whenever you deploy the CI/CD pipeline, you just change those 2 variables there and you kick it off, and the application goes and the infrastructure goes, and you don't have to worry about doing anything manually. That's something that you should do automated, because you need a repeatable process, because that's something that's always happening. Like, well, hopefully, if you have multiple clients and you have an as a service service, you'll maybe have like, 1 client a day, 2, 5, 10, 20, whatever. manually deploying that server, manually putting the application binaries on the server. That's a pain in the butt. It's a manual process, and there's no reason for it to be manual. And because of that, that's the definition of a repeatable process. All right, everybody, we got, 10 requests coming in every day that we need to be able to deploy this POC in this environment. Let's go ahead and just make this a repeatable process. So now that we understand what we should actually automate, which essentially is anything that you need to be repeatable, not just the manual crap that's going to create more tech debt, anything that needs to be repeatable. Let's go ahead and take a look at CICD using GitHub Actions. And I chose GitHub Actions because there's a lot of really awesome and great CICD platforms and tools out there, but I feel like at this point everybody's got a GitHub account and everybody can jump in and use GitHub Actions, so there's not a lot of sign up that's required there. So let's go ahead, we'll jump into that and we'll see how CICD works using a little bit of Terraform and GitHub Actions. All right, so we are at GitHub here. And this is where we're going to be, number one, saving our code. Number two, kicking it off. So if I just go back to the main.tf here, the first thing that you're going to see is our Terraform configuration. So I have the Terraform backend set up, and that's going to be specifying where my state file is going to go. So the bucket, the key name, aka the TF state file name, and the region. I have my required providers, and then I'm just creating a real straightforward S3 bucket here. I'm enabling versioning, and then server-side encryption I'm setting up for AES 256-bit. Now the part that's actually important, well, I mean, code is important, but the part that's actually important for the CI/CD pipeline is the YAML pipeline itself. So first things first, we're setting up our name here, and this is just the name of the pipeline, and metadata name. You can name it anything you want. The on keyword here essentially means that you could either set it up as continuous deployment or continuous delivery. So you could set it up where, anytime you push to the repo, the pipeline gets kicked off, or you could set it up to where it's almost a manual pipeline where you go and you press a button, which is what we're going to do here. And that's what workflow dispatch means. Next, you have your jobs. So our job is going to be a deploy job. We're going to use Ubuntu latest, which is essentially a container that's managed by GitHub. The container spins up as your configuration is being deployed, and then it spins down. So it's not static or anything. It is ephemeral, so you wouldn't want to save anything specific to it like files. Next, I can set up an environment variable here, and I can say, is this environment for dev, staging, prod, etc. And then we go down to our steps. So our steps number one, we check out the code, which is kind of like doing like a git clone. Next, we configure our AWS credentials. So to authenticate to AWS to be able to run the Terraform code, we need the ability to authenticate. And to authenticate, what we're going to do is we're going to set up some Github Secrets. And the way you do that is inside of the repo, you go to your settings, you go down to secrets, and then within your secrets here, you can see how I have AWS access key ID and AWS secret access key. I set that up, of course, via IAM. And then I call upon those secrets using the secret special variable name, and then I do dot the secret name itself. After that, I can go ahead and I can set up Terraform, aka install it on that Ubuntu latest container that GitHub is managing. I can set up any specific comments in here, like what the code is doing. For example, maybe I'm creating an S3 bucket for Kinesis data. And then I go through my Terraform init, format, plan, apply, just like I would on the CLI. Now, one thing that I do want to point out is you do have to specify the working directory where the code is. So if I come up here, for example, you could see that the directory where the main.tf is under AWS_S3_bucket. And then once you have your pipeline set up, you can go ahead and you can go to actions. And you can notice here that I have a new action called create S3 bucket. And what I can do is I could run that workflow. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click run on that workflow here. And if I just go ahead and I refresh the page, we're going to see that pop up for us. And then we can click deploy right here and wait for it to complete. And as we can see, it did finish successfully and it followed all of our steps that we set up. So the configure AWS credentials, set up Terraform, init, format, plan, apply, and then it ultimately created our S3 bucket. And that's how you can get started using CI/CD specifically with GitHub Actions. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you for week 7.